Can I share a dream I recently had? I was in a gymnasium. In this gymnasium, somebody came up to me and said he wanted to know what was required from the woman he was about to marry. So this was the man. He was about to get married, and he asked me, what would she expect of me? What would she be thinking about? What was the excitement? What was the feeling she'd have? So I went through explaining, which seems strange to me, but I went through explaining the kind of things that will be in the woman's heart. How you, the groom, would be the focus of her heart and her thoughts. You would be the centre of her thoughts. You would be the one she's thinking about all of the time. You would be the one she'd be talking about all of the time. You would be the one she'd be wanting to please, wanting to understand, wanting to spend time with. Well, as I went on explaining what the future bride would be wanting, my mind considered myself as the potential bride of Christ and how I should be thinking. Am I thinking as I should be thinking? Is Jesus everything to me? Does he fill my thoughts? Is he the one I desire? Is he the one I think about? Is he the one I want to know about? Is he the one I want to learn about? So as I was explaining, the parallel I was giving is what I thought Jesus would be expecting of me, and I simply went through the list of explaining what I thought the woman would be like who would be waiting for Jesus to come. So I explained her desires, her hopes, her dreams, what her thoughts would be about, how she wanted to please him, how she'd want to know about him and understand him and spend time with him. Anyway, the gentleman said, "Thank you very much, very appreciative," and left. And as he left, here I am in this old gymnasium with wooden floor, high walls, and I started heading for the door. As I headed for the door, it was daylight. I headed down the street, and as though there was a kind of break in the dream, and suddenly I was approaching a square. Now it was dusk. So it was dusk, and I was approaching this square, and in the square many workmen were heading home in the same direction. Dark trousers, almost manual labour kind of clothing. Having done a hard-working job, not in an office. So they were walking home. They had brownish, greyish trousers, greyish jacket. It looked as though it was some time in the past, and each one of them had a hat on, similar to this, similar, but not quite the same. And they were heading across the square in the same direction. There was an urgency, a slight urgency. However, as I started going through the square, crossing the square, I noticed a man. He was dressed differently. He had a shirt, striped shirt, nice striped shirt, and trousers, and he was standing there, not looking at anybody, but as he was standing there, he was holding in his hand, high, a needle. And the other hand was as though he's holding his hand up like this in the air, and this needle in the air, and he was looking forward. He was a tailor. Then I saw another one in the square as these people were walking across the square, fairly urgently at dusk. And then as I continued to cross the square, everybody's going across that direction, and I'm sort of crossing it in this direction, so I'm cutting between the crowd as they're moving across the square. And then on my left, I saw one of these tailors, and he was fitting what appeared to be a wedding veil to somebody. And I noticed I could see through the wedding veil, and I could see the person's face. And as they were fitting this wedding veil, what seemed strange is I wasn't sure if it was a man or a woman. I carried on walking, and there was another tailor fitting another wedding veil. Again, I got the sense that there was an urgency. It was dusk, and then I became aware that it wasn't just dusk. It was dusk on the Sabbath. It was the eve of the Sabbath. In other words, at nightfall, at 6 p.m, it would become the Sabbath. So this was the Friday night. And that's why they were urgently heading home to be there before the Sabbath began. So I continued across the square, and as I got towards the far side, there was like a building, almost like the kind of building on wheels that you'd see at a fairground, but an old one. And it was at the far side of the square. So I went to the left of this sort of single-storey kind of colourful shed on wheels. And as I went to the left and came around the front of it, in front of me was two women. And one of them was showing another woman a piece of cloth. And this is what I heard her say. "This will make the Jews jealous." I thought, oh, this will make the Jews jealous. As I came closer, I noticed it was a wedding veil, but very, very different from the wedding veils I'd seen in the square. This wedding veil was very intricate, but I knew that when you put it on the person, you would not be able to see their face. They would be able to see out, but you could not see in. It completely shrouded who was in and covered them. As I carried on walking past and saw this intricate wedding veil, then I heard the woman say, "This is for a Gentile bride." So this is for a Gentile bride, and it will make the Jews jealous. I carried on across the square, started to leave the square, and I woke up. By the way, notice the two women. The woman showing the wedding veil to the other woman, she was a seamstress. I forgot to say, on this side, on the side of that wooden shed on wheels, it said seamstress. So that was the dream. Two wedding veils. It was close to the Sabbath. It was close to the time when you had to be home, you had to be ready. There was an urgency about it. And what was being offered was two wedding veils. One was good quality, but you could see the person wearing it, you could see through it. The other, very high quality, intricate, amazing piece of cloth. When the wearer wears that, you would not be able to see their face. That was for a Gentile bride and would make the Jews jealous. That was the dream I had. So that garment, having just come back from Italy, now is the time to prepare, for the Christians to prepare for the coming of the Messiah. Now is the time to prepare. So how do we prepare? We prepare by having our wedding garments on. And the wedding garments the Messiah has offered, provided, as it says in Revelation, provided for the followers of Jesus, it's perfect. It is perfect. We need to be sanctified. We need to be sanctified through the words of Jesus. We need to begin to believe Jesus, believe what he teaches, believe his words. We need to have his words living inside us. What I do, I find this very helpful. Being dyslexic, also having Asperger's syndrome, reading has always been a challenge for me. So I got a rendition of the New Testament, the New King James Version, and I purchased a copy called The Word of Promise. It's an app that works on my phone. It's an app that I've downloaded onto my computer, and it's called The Word of Promise. And that is a dramatized version of the whole Bible. I purchased the whole Bible. You can just purchase the New Testament. And I listen to it when I go to bed. As I fall asleep, the Bible is being taught to me. If I wake up during the night, I'm at some part of the Bible. What I have been doing for many years now, over 8 years, is listening to Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, getting the words of Jesus inside of me, enabling those words to live inside of me so I can live by them, so they come to mind. those words, I used to struggle with so many things. So many things. I lived a Christian life of powerlessness and failure. And I became a Christian in 79. I couldn't overcome the weaknesses in my character, the failures. And of course, I went to a reasonably on-the-ball church, preaching, abandon sin, walk a sinless life. Yes, you ask for forgiveness if you do something wrong. It says that by Paul and Peter teach that you repent if you do something wrong. However, this walk of powerlessness always upset me quietly, didn't let anybody else know. However, I got the feeling a number of years ago to start reading Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. And so I started reading Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. You might find this utterly unbelievable, but my life began to change simply reading Matthew, Mark, Luke and John over and over and over. Listening to it on the app, on the Word of Promise. I listened to it and listened to it and listened to it. It'd be playing when I go to bed. In my vehicle, I turn the radio on. There's no radio. It has a little plug-in USB with a chip on it, and it has Matthew, Mark, Luke and John on. So as soon as I turn the radio on, it's at the next point where I turned it off, of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. And I'm getting the words of Jesus in me, and what I have found, and this is so amazing, because what am I doing? All I'm doing is listening to Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. But what I'm finding is I'm starting to live a life where I'm not failing. I've got a strength. I'm able to walk the walk. I'm able to live the way Jesus wants me to live. I'm understanding his words. I'm understanding his words, and I'm able to live them. Some of you know Jesus says forgive, and it's not an option. Jesus says forgive. Forgive. If you don't, your Father in heaven will not forgive you. If you don't forgive those who trespass against you, neither will your Father in heaven forgive you your trespasses against him. That's what Jesus says. And I'm learning to respond by saying, Jesus said, Jesus said, Jesus said. I'm learning that is the most important thing. So as I'm saying, Jesus said, I'm learning these words. I'm able to walk in forgiveness. I'm able to walk in this kind of obedience, this life-changing walk. I am amazed. I am amazed, and I would encourage you to embark upon this walk. And what's again amazing, as you read Matthew, Mark, Luke and John over and over and over, you will find the amazing things Jesus says that you may have missed. Like, my words sanctify you. That's right. My words sanctify you. That's why he wants his words to live in us, because he wants us to be sanctified. He's provided the way. Then we're to walk in obedience to those words. You will find doing what Jesus says is abiding in him. If you do what Jesus says, that's abiding in him. His words abiding in me abiding in him. How? By doing what he says. I would encourage you to embark upon this walk, this life-changing, amazing walk. Jesus in you and you in him. Jesus' words in you, and by you walking in obedience, you abide in him. It is amazing. Be blessed. Have an awesome day. It's so exciting. Jesus is coming. We've got to prepare. Hallelujah.